How new tariffs could cost you $200 a month. Insights from Yale. Imagine facing an extra $200 in monthly expenses. This is the stark reality that a recent report from the Budget Lab at Yale suggests could be on the horizon for consumers if new tariffs are implemented on August 1st. According to the analysis, the financial burden could amount to an additional $2,800 annually for households, a significant increase that many families may struggle to absorb. Ernie Tedeschi, the lab's director of economics, highlighted that one of the primary contributors to this potential rise in costs is grocery prices, which could see an increase of up to 4% over the next year or two. A 4% hike in food prices over the next 12 to 24 months is akin to experiencing 2 additional years of food inflation on top of what we are already facing, he explained. This is not just a statistic. It represents a real challenge for families trying to manage their budgets. The issue of food price inflation is already evident. For instance, in December, prices rose by 1.8% compared to the previous year, but by June, that rate had escalated to 2.4%. Many consumers are acutely aware of these changes. Gillian Belgrave-Seeley, a resident of New Britain, expressed her frustration, stating, "It's so expensive, especially for vegetables, meat, and fruits." The Trump administration has set a firm deadline of August 1st for other nations to negotiate new trade agreements if they wish to avoid these increased tariffs. This has sparked renewed debate among lawmakers. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat Connecticut, seized upon the findings of the Budget Lab report to voice his concerns about the tariffs, urging his Republican colleagues to experience the reality of rising grocery prices firsthand. To my Republican colleagues who say we're fear-mongering, I would say, go buy some tomatoes. Go into your grocery store, he challenged. In contrast, Ben Proto, the chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party, accused Blumenthal and his fellow Democrats of engaging in political theatrics. He pointed out that consumer confidence had actually risen in July and argued that the increase in grocery prices aligns with broader inflation trends, likely influenced by various other factors. Democrats are lost in the wilderness. They have no agenda, no message, and no vision for what they want to do, Proto asserted. So they're grasping at whatever they can find. Tedeschi acknowledged the complexity of isolating the specific impact of inflation on grocery prices, particularly since the costs of items like eggs and beef can fluctuate significantly. Moreover, experts remain uncertain about how many food products might be exempt from these tariffs. Nevertheless, Tedeschi anticipates that tariffs will likely affect the prices of produce, meats, and other food items that are not domestically produced. Reshoring much of this production back to the United States is quite challenging without negatively impacting other sectors of the economy, Tedeschi noted. This raises an important question. How will these tariffs truly affect our everyday lives, and are we prepared for the potential consequences? What do you think? Are these tariffs a necessary step for economic growth, or are they simply a burden on consumers? Share your thoughts in the comments. How Trump's tariffs are raising prices, a deep dive. The core issue at hand is that many people believe higher tariffs will lead to lower prices, but in reality, the opposite is often true. Higher tariffs tend to push prices up. And this is where the controversy begins. But here's where it gets controversial. The largest tax increase in U.S. history is currently unfolding right before our eyes, driven by the Trump administration's aggressive import taxes, or tariffs. While the full scope of these taxes won't be entirely clear until after what's dubbed Liberation Day 3 on August 1st, the evidence already points to a massive financial impact. In June alone, the government collected approximately $26.6 billion from tariffs, according to official reports. To put that into perspective, this is a dramatic jump from around $6 billion per month in 2024 before the tariffs were ramped up. When you do the math, this increase amounts to roughly $240 billion annually. Over a decade, that adds up to an astonishing $2.4 trillion, an enormous sum that essentially represents a significant tax hike. This increase in tariffs would roughly translate to an additional $1,900 per household, but experts agree that the final figure could be much higher. Trump has threatened to impose an extra 10 to 30% tax on imports from major trading partners like Mexico, Canada, the European Union, and Japan. If these threats materialize, the total tariff revenue could double, making this tariff surge by far the largest tax increase in U.S. history. Most evidence suggests that American consumers will bear the brunt of these costs, yet the Trump administration continues to deny this reality. The first clear signs of inflationary pressure from tariffs appeared with the June Consumer Price Index (CPI) report. Certain goods heavily affected by tariffs saw notable price increases. Clothing prices rose by 0.4%, appliances by 1.9%, and visual and audio products by 1.1%. Meanwhile, the overall CPI outpaced wage growth, leading to a slight decline of 0.1% in real wages for that month. Although wage data can be unpredictable, recent trends show wages growing more slowly, which, combined with rising inflation, means Americans are experiencing a decrease in their purchasing power and living standards, marking a shift from the healthy growth seen during the Biden years. Many analysts, including myself, have been surprised that the price hikes from tariffs haven't been more severe so far. There are two main reasons for this. First, businesses stockpiled imports in the first quarter of 2024, building up inventories at an annual rate of over $50 billion, which then surged to a $207 billion annual rate in the first quarter. This stockpile allowed companies to sell from their reserves without immediately passing on the tariffs to consumers. Second, there's a lot of uncertainty about whether these tariffs will stay in place. Trump seems to enjoy the unpredictability, often announcing tariffs as if they're part of a reality TV show, only revealing them after a commercial break. This uncertainty discourages businesses from raising prices prematurely, fearing that tariffs might be reversed or altered. For example, the auto industry actually saw a 0.3% decrease in car prices in June, as manufacturers hesitated to increase prices based on tariffs that might not stick. Over time, if tariffs remain, companies will likely raise prices to cover their costs. Another common claim from Trump is that exporters will absorb the tariffs, shielding consumers from higher prices. However, historical data and recent observations suggest otherwise. A recent study by Trump's Council of Economic Advisors attempted to argue that import prices are falling relative to domestic prices, implying that importers are absorbing the costs. But this approach ignores the fact that tariffs are expected to raise the prices of domestically produced goods as well. The real goal of tariffs, as Trump often claims, is to bolster domestic industries by making imported goods more expensive, thereby encouraging consumers to buy domestically made products. Looking at the actual data, the prices of core, non-fuel, non-agricultural imports had been gradually rising before Trump's election, and this trend has continued with only minor changes since then. Conversely, the prices of core goods, excluding volatile sectors, had been falling at about 1.5% annually from March 2023 to August 2024. Since August, however, these prices have started to increase again at roughly 1% per year. If the previous downward trend had persisted, we could have saved around $120 billion annually, about half of the tariff revenue collected in June, highlighting how tariffs are already impacting consumer prices. In summary, the evidence clearly indicates that tariffs are causing significant increases in the prices Americans pay for goods. If these tariffs stay in place or are expanded, the impact on consumer costs will only grow larger. This means we are, in effect, experiencing the largest tax hike in U.S. history, an economic move that could have profound implications for household budgets and overall living standards. And this is the part most people miss. The assumption that tariffs are a free or beneficial way to boost domestic industry is overly simplistic. In reality, they often lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced purchasing power, and potential retaliation from trading partners. Do you agree that tariffs are a hidden tax on everyday Americans, or do you believe they serve a greater strategic purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments. This debate is far from settled.